Today is Friday.
We're live.
Morning, next Friday, May 10th.
It's pretty.
A joint meeting again of Senate Natural Resources and Energy, Senate Economic Development. We're here to continue our work at page 687. We went through a proposal of amendment yesterday. Council is making some fairly light changes there, so a good place to start today. Morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
Would see how would be going through that and just making sure we got the work done that we intended to get done. Yes. So, Mr. Kowski, if you could just walk us through the current draft, which is draft 2.1, just page 87. Time date stay of 5/9/24, 6:59 p.m.
A civilized hour.
6:59.
Mr. Kowski, Office of Legislative Counsel. Today, the amendment you're looking at to H 687 is the Senate proposal to the House proposal of amendment. Yes, it only has the handful of changes that you requested yesterday morning. And so I will point them out. So the text changes get easier. The sections in this draft are just things that I have drafted.
Okay. Kirby has done.
There are other attorneys who have worked at H 687, and I hope if you have changes related to things they have drafted, you are asking them of them.
Okay. I didn't know they are done. I just didn't know.
So you can, I'm sure you can talk to him.
Sure, can you do that and then follow up with the chair of finance? Just a question.
Sure, although, yeah, so let's get things squared away. I know there's more than one conversation of tracking along.
Chair of finance,
Yes,
did you in fact take up those changes yesterday?
we went through at least the property transfer tax sections yesterday.
Okay, so you're on. You're on.
Some
I saw Senator Chisholm's tree.
Yeah, he's getting them out and I also just, Mr. Keaton, so maybe
Okay.
we can ask Mr. Keaton, are you ready with this, well, Madam Chair of Finance, is finance ready to also?
I am not seeing Kirby.
Just maybe choose.
It's not there.
But-
I know Ways and Means is also meeting.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
All right, so
Let him do.
let's take the Act 250 that we have, and then we know there'll be financial stuff to follow, and that's like our proposal amendment. The idea is, of course, to turn them into one amendment and have as many senators as feel comfortable with the proposed merged language on the amendment, because we'd all be offering, anyone who's interested be offering it as an individual senate. Okay, so let's double back to yesterday's. Let's check our work from yesterday.
So the first thing, I just reordered the sections so they were in numerical order. The draft has also been edited, so there are a few punctuations and spelling mistakes that were fixed. But the first substantive change is in the fourth instance of amendment, which is on page 1, and it's changing the date to July 1, 2027 as the sunset date for the interim housing exemption. So that is, that was a typo on my part. All of the interim exemptions now have July 1, 2027. The other change is on page 3. Which you did reorder. The other changes on page 3 in the sixth instance of amendment. The sixth instance of amendment has this language that reads, within 120 days of an application being deemed complete, the appropriate municipal panel shall notice and warn a hearing on the application. Right.
Notice and warn, okay.
Right? Is that it for changes that came out of yesterday's conversation?
Yes.
I'll get you a chair.
So maybe we go back to the top, I mean, we signed off on all these.
I think we did.
Yeah, are there any questions, discussions on these things that we sorted out yesterday? So setting aside the money for the moment, are there any additional proposals to amendment the non-financial parts of
Yes.
the bills? Senator Hartman.
I think some of us, maybe all of us, at the top of the amendment of the House proposal 5.1. I think it's the top of page 25. We wanted to strike flooding or so that it would read. At the top of page 25, number 3, it would read whether the real property was subject to flood damage. While the others still and get rid of flooding or. I think there was general notion that we wanted to do that and limit that.
Is this the tax, the value free section?
This is the disclosure section.
Yeah.
The disclosure section.
I don't know, I'm looking at Senator Watson.
Yeah, so
We had talked about this and I could put it on the table.
I think the question, the larger question is, I think we have the realtors in the room, generally, it's best practice to disclose if your basement floods, et cetera. It's qualified by real property, so it is structural, I think. Do the realtors have
Peter's
a
here.
comment on?
Mr. Senator.
What's the question?
It is in the flood disclosure section.
Finances amended.
The new requirement when you're transferring, conveying real property is that you disclose flooding or flood damage to real property. We are questioning flooding or because many people's basements flood or they might not capture what would be required under a flood disclosure provision. It sounds like it's probably generally best practice to say if the real property experiences flooding, regardless of whether it's a major weather event or not.
Yes, Peter Tucker,
Both.
Vermont Association of Realtors.
Keep up.
I think that the challenge is that, the damage to a basement, regardless of whether it's a flood or some other kind of water penetration, should be disclosed. And I think what you're trying to do is to extend that beyond our work, which we feel we're required to disclose to, for example, my owner properties, things of that nature, to make sure that, you don't chase that gap. So the way we do it is, have you had water in your basement? I mean, I think that was the way, our selling property information report describes.
And that has real cost bumping in it.
Hey, I think pause just for a moment. Can we make wait for Senator Brown who's on the
go ahead, and Tom is going to comment.
Almost getting.
That's okay, I don't want to see. It's good for your head without the
Doing in my knees.
That's further thought.
Yeah.
You, I think everyone.
Yeah, a lot of them.
That's the wedding toast. Okay, back to work.
We can get the committees together.
Yeah, so,
Three. The only one that.
Mr. Tucker was answering the question. I don't know if you're finished with an answer, then Senator McDonald has follow up on the same.
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Senator McDonald, will you question about disclosure?
When you're saying that something should be disclosed, it must be disclosed. The opposite of disclosing is the legal ability to keep secret, is it not? Or am I missing something here?
Yes, good.
Well, I can't imagine that the realtors would be advocating on what they intend to keep secret when they're showing properties. That just doesn't fit with what I've always been told about how realtors have codes of ethics, etc.
And so there would be a good actor in saying,
Yeah.
we should disclose it.
Yeah.
Right. They should disclose that it's flooded or has had.
We do
So we
this
should
well.
keep up.
We use
Yeah.
our license.
So then the word order is and
flooding and or, well, it's both, I mean, one.
But when you say it's or, you can pick one or the other. Do you have to pick them both, which is an and?
So,
Would you have?
I just wonder what it says.
Sorry.
Pretty frequently we have a wet basement without it.
And the other end.
I think by leaving it as an or, it is the most expansive. So if you had flooding but no damage particularly, you still have to disclose it. So you would have to disclose the most things if it was an or.
Both,
Yes.
Yes,
so why is there an or when it means both?
so it doesn't necessarily mean both.
Well, then you can pick one and not disclose the
Oh, I
other.
see what you're saying.
You could add the word both.
Do we intend to give an opportunity to deliberately not disclose something because the word or is in there?
Yeah.
so
No, you're
I'm
right.
gonna say pause and look at the language, I don't know that everyone knows exactly what they are. It's pretty clear.
Section 102.
Senator Farmer,
Thank you. As an occasional grammar pest, I apologize, but I think Senator McDonald made well.
well,
That and or actually mean very different things.
Yeah.
And if you want both, you say
It's
and. If you say or, then you can do one and not the other, or you can do the other and not the first.
okay, so line, what's the line number for page 158 of
Or page 25 of the amendment, it's top of page 25. Number three, whether the real property was subject to, you could either say to both flooding or flood damage or flooding and flooding damage, which do you prefer?
that's
You can say
I think the word would be water damage, not the flood damage.
That's a good question.
There's certain things, so I think.
They gave it back to John, so I would maybe
One
amend
or
house
water.
trapped version to us.
Or water damage. Is what I
That
think we're.
you're modifying what's subject to.
Yeah.
Not what you not disclose. It's the property was subject to either
Yes.
flooding or water damage.
Or lands, it's a both.
Or land movement.
Ellen makes a good point that you can't have flood damage without flooding. So that's sort of, but you can have water damage without flooding.
Can I also say something? I did not draft this, and the drafter is not in this room.
Mr. Gray.
And so if you have subsequent questions on this, I cannot help you with this.
Okay. Well. So, what's odd, just sort it out, we're all, have a lot of experience reading the language. The subject, so whether the real property was subject to flooding or flood damage while without possessed. See,
I think the or is appropriate in this case, it captures both and you're subject to both.
Or you could add both. To both flooding or flood damage, or you could say either or neither.
Personally feel like we should not make any changes unless it is a critical, like, red button moment. That's my personal opinion. So far, what I've seen with the amendments that Council Tchaikovsky has gone through, I'm comfortable with everything in that amendment. My only questions at this point, and I think similar to Senator McDonald, are the sections that we have not heard from Mr. Gray and just where those shook off. But otherwise, I personally am fine with everything we've discussed so far and feel comfortable with being on the amendment.
Yes,
so,
I would second that. The one remaining issue other than this grammatical question was the land banks. So that's the 29th instance of the mention.
just to tidy up our work as we go, so we're all in agreement that our. The draft 2.1 from this morning, we're all set on that language, yeah, now the question, what more, we're back to that, what more might we add? We can chase down the flooding or flood damage question, I guess we at least. Fine, as it will. We'll. Put a flag on it and come back to it, and all, other proposals of amendment.
I think we should reserve land bank study for John, and are people okay with that?
Because we're under the.
Okay, so
We want
John and I are working on data privacy, that's probably why he's not here right now. So if people are okay, I can communicate those two pieces to him.
Okay,
And they're
this is the first, just so we're.
making sure that we
Okay.
believe in this language.
The
letting-
29
Yeah.
instance on page 20.
Okay, so we get flooding or number one, number two is reinstallation of the land bank.
Yes, undeleted.
Got it, okay, and I think, any other proposals?
While we have Ellen in the chair, there are two other things I wanted to discuss. These were reminders from the stakeholder group that's been graciously and mercifully traveling around telling us what's happening. So the natural resources chair and I were trying to understand two pieces we had in our bill that changed. And that was allowing for someone to get tier 1A status before they have the additional wastewater capacity to handle a large new project. They're getting that status, which is, you know, a figurative thing. And then if a project moves forward, that would no longer be theoretical, they would have to have the improvement done, they would have to get a wastewater permit, they would have to have sufficient wastewater capacity. So we would be shutting a lot of our population centers out of getting tier 1A status that allows them to start thinking about what that means with both commercial and residential projects. And there would be many other steps that they would need to ensure they have the sufficient capacity before the project is approved. They would have multiple permits at the municipal and state level through A&R.
I think we talked about land improvements before. So it's they're going in and out.
They can get the status with that existing capacity or the plan to improve that capacity. Often extending that new capacity is iterative with the developer or with the person who's putting the infrastructure in the ground or paying for new, think beta or a huge housing project.
Can I do a suggestion?
Yes,
Thank you, the putting in new infrastructure requires, you know, it's a long time, right? So plan is good, but planned and finance is better. Because if it's not funded somehow, either through a capital improvement fund of a town,
I think they're all
not gonna happen.
I think they're all looking.
but
For
plan,
the finance piece is, so many of them are saying, hey, if this new project comes to fruition, we'll have the last $2 million we need to get the wastewater agreement between South Burlington and Shelburne. That's literally happening right now. They are finalizing the financing package as they grow, and we'd be cutting them out of this status, which is a figurative thing before they can have all of the money in place.
So we have Ms. Meeker in the room, and can you speak to this as someone involved in planning and then
Sure, so Catherine Dimitra from Northwest Regional Planning Commission. I have two thoughts on this. One is that I absolutely agree that if you don't have some provision for planned capacity, you are potentially leaving out some really important areas that we want to really enable to have tier 1A status. My second thought is, and this is more a question for your council, I think, is whether the language as drafted would allow that consideration to be incorporated into the rulemaking for tier 1A rather than having to change the bill itself.
That's a
council, do you have?
there's no tier 1A rulemaking.
Oh, I thought there was.
They will be issuing guidance to municipalities in their applications.
So maybe in the guidance it could be addressed.
Hey, watching?
Thank you. I mean, I'm trying to imagine, sorry, I stepped out, so maybe this was said, but I'm imagining what the House's objection was to this language and how, you know, we can be thoughtful about finding common ground. And so I would guess that there, I don't, maybe others who've been tracking the conversation in the other body might know this better, but I'm imagining that the conversation went something like, well, if it's planned, then it's not really real. And if it's could you apply and have something planned and then just be like, oh, just kidding, we're not gonna do that. And I get that as a fear, and so I wonder if, as I'm putting this on the table as a potential middle ground, that that the planned improvement has to have at least begun the permitting process, right? Like that you have submitted that there's something that you can point at that's like, we have started.
Well, and it's fine, I mean, I don't think that's a bad issue.
That's bad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Mr. Brady.
I think the finance
permitting is close to as good as.
That's
permitted and
Anyways.
So, Ted Brady from Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I think a good example would be Wilson. Wilson doesn't have a water and wastewater treatment plant. They buy their capacity from neighboring Essex. So are you saying if they think they're gonna have development in 10 years, do they have to buy capacity 10 years ahead? I don't think that makes much sense. Like, that's a good example of why they're not all the same situation. So I think having the plans, finance might even be a bridge too far, and that takes a decade to
Well,
develop and finance a wastewater treatment expansion in some of these communities, so.
permitted.
Permitted,
I am permitted.
the project is gonna take time to permit. I think if we're saying, let's allow a place to get 1A status, but they can't do the actual development unless they have the wastewater system in place. I mean, that's,
It's just.
the development can't happen without the wastewater capacity, so. Giving them the plan, I think, is the language you had originally had is,
explained it.
is preferable.
So it gets something head on, because they have plan.
I don't, well, no, I don't think we're getting to a head of the line, but.
Makes the matter.
Give them the same status as others to plan for the future. With plenty of gates where they have to show their wastewater capacity before anything is permitted.
What if another neighboring town comes up and pays cash for the available disposal that someone else has planned for without having to pay for it?
Then they don't get to move forward with the project, the capacity is gone.
Which one?
But they already qualified for tier 1A status, I think it's his point.
What would that have to do with a specific project being permitted because they have built out or created the sufficient capacity?
So in this example, what I'm hearing in Senator Bill,
The example that the witness gave was that you wanna build a project. The town and the neighboring town has the capacity for your project. And you wanna be permitted to build because of those two things, but you haven't paid for. Showed that you're gonna pay for the purchase of the capacity in the next town.
We're talking about a land use map and the ability to have
I'm
freedom
talking
within a
about-
land use map, that's tier 1A.
Sewage.
So sewage is dealt with within tier 1A with several other permits that require that before any specific project in tier 1A is permitted, that it show that the capacity is present, not there in the future. But tier 1A status is the land use map that says, you're Williston, we think you should grow here, and we're gonna check back in at every step of the way with every kind of permit imaginable to make sure you actually have the wastewater capacity to do that.
If you don't, you're getting it from the neighboring town.
But do we not want people to share wastewater capacity across town?
When
Like,
you say you plan to get it from the neighboring town, do you have a certificate of having
right
leased,
now, I
borrowed,
believe, cause
paid
I
for?
vote on this, that Shelburne and South Burlington are negotiating. Paying for new capacity together so they can cooperate.
Cause see, when you go get the permit, has that negotiation
Yeah.
ended
Yeah.
and you haven't paid an agreement
Yes,
that you would have that capacity?
yes.
And it would change your mind? Or some other-
well, I think there has been situations where communities have been under the impression that they would be connected to lines that ultimately the attorney town did not.
Like
Norwich and
Norwich.
we've had that exact situation where we've been told we could build and then, or in Norwich, and then
Remember that.
Hartford doesn't actually extend the line.
You
So I
might not get to hear when I down.
No.
Yes, and that's, I think, the question here.
So here,
I just have a suggestion of a different word from planned, we could say scheduled. Which could include financing, it doesn't necessarily include financing, but it implies that it's part of a plan.
I think.
So if it's scheduled, well, just things like that do happen.
Can we add guidance? Can we say planned improvement and then say with guidance specific to
we could,
help us the NRC?
I'm wondering if
to, Captain Matrix point, it, within the 1A guidance. We say include plan improvements and call out within the guidance, including.
Schedule.
Imminent agreement.
Yeah.
You have to postpone, you'll meet your schedule.
Yeah, usually you have to take a vote.
No, postpone.
Okay,
You just have to vote on a bond.
The town has
So,
to vote, but
how
then
about-
individual.
what I'm hearing, that sounds like a way to address it, may not be perfect, but. If it's both sides of things, it'll say include plan improvements. And in the guidance document, provides guidance on how securely that has to be specified. Alright. Anything else?
Where are we landing?
Back to the.
Sorry, can
Okay.
Where are we landing?
Can you say that again?
Sure.
Plan improvements goes back in,
Yes,
and then like with your artful phrasing, you'll add something to the guidance. That the guidance will address, securing the capacity required through any plan improvement, something else. We wanted, they should speak to the point of you can use the notion of plan improvement. But we should try to do like a reality check on how firmly expressed it is.
you could just use reasonably expected to occur or wording like that.
So do you want more direction, or do you want to think about how you would include it? It's just a request that the guidance address that aspect.
Something we can take to the bank.
Address what planned means
Yeah, sure,
or
that you would, if. To define, clarify what your planned improvements are and schedule for their implementation. Something along those lines.
Trust council.
well, no, because I'm a little.
she's the
sorry,
right
how
to be
we're-
canceled.
Right, here.
Right. I would say with, like, something like with no development taking place without sufficient wastewater capacity. Secured, I mean, this is saying you have this status and then. The guidance will say, obviously, the status doesn't change whether or not you. Get permits to support your wastewater capacity.
Sure.
At the time that you approve a development, I mean. This becomes an iterative process after that, where you say, we don't have wastewater capacity for you, you're gonna have to pay for it. And then they build the wastewater capacity. As they go, but they have a status, they don't have to apply for a static status.
Wastewater capacity is being built. According to the discussion, is in the next municipality.
Yeah, we
What
don't
obliges the
we
next
share water.
municipality to actually build. what
you won't
the
get
other-
your wastewater permit
Right.
if you don't have a hookup.
I think those are separate issues though.
And both are necessary to have the
So let's
flush the toilet how it works.
for a moment. Do you have, you're listening to this conversation, do you have a sense of how we might express what the guidance document should address? This question of, how concrete or scheduled or definite or financed the quote plan improvements are.
I mean, I guess it's going to be something like the guidance document shall define what plan improvements means.
Sure.
And I think a little more concrete and like maybe along the lines of, and a schedule for implementation.
How sufficient and imminent the planned improvement?
I think you wanna know it's.
I think reasonable expectation, because some of the improvements could be 10 years away, but be necessary and be okay.
Wait till we get to the tax.
But I think reasonable expectation,
So let's,
we really do.
okay,
Yeah.
so council,
I don't know where that would go though.
I don't just,
so let's,
I would.
The guidance shall make clear what planned improvement means.
yeah.
Reasonable
agreement
on.
Okay,
Yeah, no, I just, because I feel like we have at least 3 different versions of language floating around. One possibility is that we use all of them Something,
Social media.
well, something like, including guidance around the schedule for the planned improvements, the, imminent and sufficiency of the wastewater and, in order to assess the reasonableness of its moving forward.
Great.
Do you want me to say that again?
Sure, they do want to just, I guess I don't want to, if we're talking about giving direction, the NRB to draft guidance documents that will be given to towns to guide them in what they need to provide for demonstrating compliance with tier one.
To secure 1As.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think it, right, because if you have just planned improvements, then we want to have like a little bit of structure or scaffolding around what we expect.
Something more significant.
Yeah, so including a schedule for implementation, an assessment of the sufficiency,
Imminence.
and evidence of it.
Afterwards.
Yep, and to assess the reasonableness of its.
Of the expectation that's actually.
Yeah, of its likeliness to happen, that is a little
Expectations.
love that reasonableness of likeliness, that
Yeah.
doesn't really work very well, but
Reasonable expectation. That it will.
Reasonable expectation.
I can continue.
Great expectations
Work
with
on
us
it
already.
later.
Yeah, so let's let council take a crack at some, we're better responding to language in front of us than
agree.
group think editing on the fly.
I know,
Yes.
bad.
So, good question. Well, so plan improvement goes back in, we're gonna modify the guidance language. Anything else that didn't make it into the draft? Sharon McCormick.
That's not something else that's interesting, when this is done. I would hope that we would do an analysis like the proverbial sleazy water. Figure out how something you don't want to have happen. happens with that language.
Sure.
Okay, like what didn't we think of? Because what you're saying sounds fine. But that's a way to get in trouble.
Senator Holmesdale, anything else that was on our
Well, I'm gonna
floating list?
pour rabbit to pull out of a hat. I loved your language on the ring around downtowns being eligible for PHP housing of any size. That's where we get a lot of affordable and mixed use housing where people can access it downtown while walking.
This is for interim.
This is interesting.
This is for interim. Right.
This, so this came out of your committee.
Our interim rates.
Right, we had,
Green lighting.
it was part of trying to, so designated downtown, unlimited market basically. But the unlimited housing in the expanded area was PHP.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? So Kirby has been sitting in here and he needs to go elsewhere. But it sounds like you're still working with me and John already went back to his other committee, so I think you're just working on my sections now, and perhaps finance will meet on his section.
I thought
later.
we'd be done after this with you and.
Okay, well, because you keep adding things to my list.
Well, this, I think.
Okay, but you have the floor at 10.
I
Yeah,
think
that's the last thing.
the last thing. Where,
Okay, because. We all have other.
I mean, that was the concept, is anyone remembering it any differently, that's what we had said. I'm actually, so. I had thought that was actually in the draft, so I'm glad that I was noticing, because it maybe moved in and out of a draft and got,
That was the RPCs.
and that was for PHPs in expanded areas. Half mile around. Designated downtowns, different development areas. New town centers. And rural centers, we have all four flavors. Village centers have their own schedule.
So the House had taken that out with their amendment, is what I'm hearing? Yes, and so we are asking to put that back in based on our, so what are, and their only option would be to concur at this point with whatever we're moving.
No.
So we could. Yeah, so I don't think we should get caught up on things, good question. Leadership between the two sides will figure out the calendar, and I wouldn't want to preclude doing what we think is our best proposal, based on how they respond, you know, because there's people painting the building today, say today's the last day. And I would be surprised if it were. We stick to what we think is best, and then other people will help decide.
The public has a lot invested in our work, $250,000 a week on our work. We cannot not do our best work. They're expecting us to do that, and it takes time, it takes time.
So we made that fix, everyone fine, back to where we were. Okay, that closes out all the stuff other than with Mr. Gray
So,
and
Mr.
Mr. Keaton on money.
Kirby's still here?
Yeah.
Right, oh, great.
so I just want to flag
Yes,
that the House's proposal of amendment has so you're, okay. Okay. No, I'm, okay.
okay, thank you. I'm calling it for the half mile for VHPs in the form of designated category, if you just want to. Anyone in the room, Kate, Ms. Gallagher?
Katie Gallagher, GMRC. I don't have to pull it up, but I believe that there was one exception to that radius because the downtowns had been pulled out for unlimited housing. The downtowns did not have that radius. The other designation.
Thanks.
So, well, my recollection, I'm sorry, and please help us remember what is that? Designated downtown are the only unlimited categories for market-based housing. But then
Right.
the circle around.
Oh, you're talking specifically for PHPs.
For PHP. I mean, part of the idea was we keep wanting to bring folks back to affordable and to address the claim, what you however credible or not, and we had created too little space for opportunity. So we create incentive for PHPs and create more space for development. That's where we were. That's a lot of time.
So, okay, can we look at the House proposal of amendment on page 5?
Someone can. So you.
We-
Is it the 10th instance of amendment? The 10th instance of amendment.
Which we did.
So this is the House's proposal for priority housing projects. It is unlimited priority housing projects until January 1, 2027 in areas of downtowns, neighborhood development areas, growth center for within 1/2 mile of such designated center with permanent zoning subdivision bylaws. And certified water, sewer or soils.
Okay. Well, that's why, I thought that's well, that's why I was a little surprised that it was coming up, because I thought that's where we were. So if we don't need to do it, because it's already there, thank you for that.
Okay.
One last thing to do. The super agreeable.
Some people reading extra hard flagging things for us that they're worried didn't make it. Looks like it made it.
So any other questions on that?
Oh, sure, there's no distinction between what we boiled down.
Council? Well, the thing we just talked about is what
This,
they
So-
include.
I guess the distinction is that in addition to their 1/2 mile, they have included the requirement that there be permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws and water, sewer or soils.
Right?
That is in the House's proposal, that's required, those things are required.
So I think that, so the end of that was the language that, that's what I thought actually we had to read, that we were keeping that language.
I'm sorry, I thought you said it was already an hour earlier when we've agreed to, yeah.
Someone flagged questions, and it just kind of around Hinsdale, oh, we left it out, and
Yeah.
now we're confirming that it's actually still not a problem because it was there and clean all along. Okay, Senator Chindy, you have, proposal, and is this related to?
I asked.
This is the tax proposal.
And I've communicated with Ashley that we need some dispensation for working as fast as we can.
I talk really fast.
Thank you very much.
This down.
We will, how do you want us to follow up in terms of timing for these people, those edits? I know that we're gonna be, could be a merger of like language coming from other people.
So, Lauren, the senators, we just do the people taking it down, so she knows.
Can you email her?
Hey Kirby, come here.
I don't worry. Yeah, Mr. Keaton, yeah, you can go right in. All right, thank you. That's better.
Brian.
So can we pause for a moment? For senators who would like to be on this amendment, which has to go for anybody, senators, please put your hand up if you want to be on this amendment.
The
one that's still being written, the one that we just did.
Yeah.
One we just did.
You're gonna see it.
Okay, so.
And where's
I'll
Fran?
play the tape back because I.
Okay, so you have a.
Oh, that's
We're just saying, why your name on the amendment,
I trust
you
Ella.
could withdraw. Yeah, okay, so are you all set on the head count?
Yeah.
Great,
Am I going back on 253?
I think we're gonna have to, we'll do that on a
Okay.
break from the floor. Okay, Mr. Keaton, thank you for coming back. Who is presenting? The information that we're about to look at.
Tell you, purpose of
And we have our copies?
oh, sorry, this is the finance section and the property transfer tax.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just want, there's people trying to follow, so
Okay,
I just want to make sure, so we're looking at. A proposal from offered by Senators Cummings and Chittenden, the 687 is draft 1.2 dated 5/10/24, 9:05 AM. And is it posted to our,
yes.
and it's posted on our website? Thank you so much. Back
I will
to
let
Chair Cummings.
Kirby go through the sequence. Basically, we were not happy with their proposal to do increased property transfer tax on all properties over 750. That would basically be a property transfer tax on all commercial properties. And it's a significant amount of money. Commercial properties are not hot property items right now. Downtowns are struggling in the real estate market. And so we are proposing to go back to our proposal, which is to do it on second homes. If we could live with doing it on all homes over 475, if that's the only way we can get this through. But we would prefer doing the second homes.
So
And increasing that to 3.4. And then we want to restore, they have taken out all the property value freeze that we had in. We would like to put it back in for property values in our definition in flood damaged areas that are also downtowns or within a half mile of downtown. We're thinking specifically of a neighboring community which had their entire north end underwater, destroyed a significant amount of housing. But who's not technically in there now.
So can I make a proposal to, or check in with the chief of staff? I was just about to propose that we go to the floor, because it's a 15-page amendment. And then, do our floor work, and on our next break, reconvene. And do the money without being in a super rush, and, but I would suggest people bring the amendment with them, so you can read and hit the ground running. Senator Watson.
Our next break is noon, I hope are signing off on this miscellaneous tax at 12:30.
Well, I'm guessing this is a priority, so that a break will be provided in such a way that lets us do this in a timely way.
When you say a break, I mean, are you talking about lunch really, or are you talking about like if somebody needs to talk to legislative council on the floor and there happens to be a pause?
I'm talking about
Significant
a break so much so that we could sit down just like I sit here. Yeah,
Would it be helpful if I check in with the pro tem about taking a break from the floor at 11 or 11:30?
I think the sooner we send message it to the house, so
So that you all can review and, okay,
okay.
I'll go over now and talk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
we'll announce on the floor what that time block is, we'll come back. By the time we come back, we'll also have language back from Mr. Kowski, so we can see a clean copy, can decide whether they want to on or off that amendment. And then we'll go through the financial stuff. I think as long as our base amendment includes the committees. Well, things before that we've come to, the agreement that everyone in the room needs to see us come to. And then the money piece, I don't know, we need to get everyone on that.
Right, I've emailed John, he will add the land use thing back into this amendment. So there's not multiple amendments, and he believes that flooding or flood damage is the appropriate way to go if we wanna capture both.
Beautiful.
Great.
And I would say I don't feel compelled to be a decision maker on this finance amendment. So if I'm not available, it doesn't matter to me.
Well, and you know, so we have
It matters.
3 people here who are on finance too.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah.
great,
Something called the yield bill.
Yeah.
But then
thank you, everyone.